Oh, woo, whoa. As promised, I'm back with another build, and this week I'm making Stormbreaker. Woo! Alright, so I don't know how much of this I'm going to be able to keep in frame, but because this thing is huge, I mean, but yeah. So I have to start off by saying that this build, for some reason, I don't know if it was the heat, because it's very hot here in Virginia this week, and I don't know if it's the heat. I had my garage open, but this build was just, it was intense. But anyway, I am impressed how this came out. I like how it came out. Only thing that I'll talk about that I'm not too fond of, that I'm gonna go back and fix, are these vines, and it's only with the paint. All right, let's talk about this build. So I started off by modeling this in Cinema 4D as always, and if you guys follow me on Twitter, I had put out, when they had first kind of dropped the pictures of it, of Stormbreaker, I modeled it and it wasn't like accurate until they dropped the Hot Toys pictures for Thor, and I saw the changes they had made, because I was modeling it based off of, I think Hasbro, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I think Hasbro has an actual like toy hammer, and I modeled it based off of that, but that was kind of inaccurate. So, and not to say that this one is like screen accurate, but it's better looking than the first one I modeled. So I had waited for a while, and then when Hot Toys had dropped their pictures for Thor, I went back and remodeled it and came up with this version. All right, so let's talk about printing. I printed this on the CR10. This was printed in IC3D's PLA. I printed the axe and the head in on the bed at the same time, and then the handle is split up into 3 different parts. So I printed that on another CR10, and I think overall it took maybe about a week to print. All the parts together took about a week to print. I was originally supposed to put this together and have this video out around Infinity War, but I got it together, And well, I got the handle together, so I glued the handle together, and it does have room in here to put wooden dowels in here, so that it can support its own weight. And what happened was I dropped it. Swinging this thing around. I dropped it on the floor, and the handle snapped in the places where the dowel wasn't running all the way through, because the dowel's not running all the way through. So it snapped in three pieces in the areas where the dowels are not, where the dowels were not in support. So what I had to go back and do on the back end, and I'll talk about it later, is I had to go back and put dowels in that area so that it'll support its weight, because I didn't feel like reprinting this whole thing. And but yeah, so that's what happened, and that's why I didn't get that video out to you guys. All right, let's talk about the build itself. Man, again, I think it was hot. I think it may have been the heat. It was really hot in the garage, and I was just tired after this build. But enough complaining about that. I started off with sanding the head and the axe. And again, my process is I start off with 100 grit, move up to 150, 220, and then 800. No, I'm sorry, 400, 800, and then I'd hit it with primer filler. All right, so once I had everything sanded and hit it with the primer filler, I went back and I used spot glazing putty to take care of any of the areas that were problem areas. I covered the entire hammerhead in spot glazing putty and most of the axe in spot glazing putty. I did not do that here because I knew the vines would be covered, or the branches would be covering this area. So I didn't take as much time here sanding as I did with the rest of the hammer. After the spot glazing putty dried, I went ahead and sanded it with 220 and moved all the way up to 800. And then I moved on to wet sanding. So again, my process is 1500 to 2000 grit, and just sand it so everything is nice and clean and nice and smooth. Then I went ahead and washed off everything and then hit it with another coat of primer. Actually, I hit it with the final coat of primer, and I think I gave it about 3 coats of the final primer. From there, I moved on to paint. So I did use the lacquer. I know in the last video I spoke about the lacquer and I said I was gonna hold off on it, but I did use it and it worked fine. I didn't have any major issues. I did have a bit of cracking, I believe, in one of these areas here, but again, it was really easy to fix. It was nothing major. So I started off with Alclad's black gloss primer. I've got about 2 coats of that on here. Let that dry overnight. Next day I came back. That's when I sprayed it with Model Master's Metalizer Gunmetal, the buffing one. And once that dried, I allowed that a few hours to dry, and then I masked off everything and went back with Model Master's Metalizer stainless steel and the buffing kind as well, and went ahead and finished up everything. Once everything was dry and I removed all the masking tape, I went ahead and weathered it. Now I didn't tape it, but simple weathering. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary. Watered down some acrylic paint, smeared it all over, wiped it off. I didn't do heavy weathering, but just in some of like the detail areas and kind of bring out some of the detail areas in the hammer. All right, so let's talk about the handle. So the handle was printed in 3 parts, as I said earlier, and it, like I said, it fell and it snapped into 3 pieces. So I drilled into the hammer and put wooden dowels into those areas and just glued everything back together. And now it's really sturdy. So it had some seam marks from where it was put together, and I filled that in with epoxy putty. And once the epoxy putty was dry, and I had to let that dry overnight, the only areas that I sanded on this handle were those areas, just kind of knocked it down. And I really didn't do a lot of sanding because those areas we're gonna get covered by the branches or vines or whatever they're supposed to be. I'm assuming vines. So it got covered with the vines, so I wasn't too worried about making sure that it was perfect. And plus that, it left like a nice texture on it. You probably can't pick it up in the camera, but the print lines actually add to the texture of the tree bark. After I had everything glued together, epoxy putty dried, sand down, I took rope that you can find at Michael's, and I just wrapped it around the handle a few times. So I took a bigger rope, took that apart, and then wrapped the handle with it. So there's some variation between the sizes of the vines on the actual handle. So once I had all the ropes in place, I covered that in Mod Podge and allowed that to dry. So now in terms of the vines that were on top of the handle, or the tree branches that were on top of the handle, I took apart a bigger rope that I had and I wrapped that in floral tape and then I coated it in Mod Podge, spray painted it, and allowed that to dry. And then everything got glued together with 5-minute epoxy, and there you go, Stormbreaker. Again, I enjoyed the build for the most part, and if you guys want to print one, you can head over to my Etsy shop and purchase the file and follow along and build one. Happy how this came out. Have no idea where I'm putting this. I have absolutely no room. Probably what I'll do is I'll probably model like a custom hook for this, or custom hooks to hang this from the wall, because that's the only place that this can go, because I have no other place to put it. But yeah, that's what I'll probably do, and then have it hanging somewhere in here. Somehow I'll find a way. Alright, so that does it for this build, guys. I thank you guys for tuning in. I thank you guys for watching. Like I said, I'm trying to put out content regularly, at least one video a week, and have it drop on Fridays. Okay, as usual, I'm going to start leaving a list of supplies of what I use to make these builds. You'll find links in the description. Those are affiliate links, and they help the channel and me out to produce content for you guys. For this build, I use the CR10. If you want to purchase one for yourself, there is a link down in the description. And I'm also on Patreon. If you want to head over to my Patreon page, and if you become a patron, you get access to some exclusive files that I don't post anywhere, and I just make those files available to my patron. As usual, if you guys want to keep up to date with the things I'm doing, you can follow me on Twitter at TheBrokenNerd83, or you can follow me on Instagram at TheBrokenNerd83. And again, I'd like to thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for watching. Until next time, peace and love. God bless. Ugh.